The federal government says rapper Pooh Shiesty is simply too dangerous to be out on.
Gucci Mane went public with footage of Pooh Shiesty robbing him. And if you think you know what happened between these two, you do not have the full picture yet. Because this is not just about a beef, a diss track, or internet rumor. There is actual footage. There are federal charges. And Gucci Mane is cooperating with the government to make sure Pooh Shiesty never sees the outside of a prison again. His own security guard wrote a letter to the judge specifically asking that Shiesty not be given bond. Let that register for a second. The man who signed Pooh Shiesty, who held his spot on the label while he was locked up, who publicly kept him on the roster when everyone else got dropped. That same man is now sitting on the other side of a federal case. And the tape he has could be what sends Shiesty away for life. Federal kidnapping charges, a weapon allegedly pointed at Gucci's face, and Shiesty was still on supervised release from his last conviction when this allegedly went down. One charge alone carries a potential life sentence, and the people closest to this case are not treating it like a rap beef. They are treating it like the end. Now, behind that headline is a story that goes so much deeper than what most people cover. We went through the federal criminal complaint, the FBI affidavit, the court filings, the detention hearing transcripts, and the full documented timeline of how Gucci Mane and Pooh Shiesty went from one of the most promising partnerships in Southern rap to a federal kidnapping case with a potential life sentence on the table. And trust us, the real story hits different. Yo, what's good, fam? Welcome back. If you are new here, we do not do surface-level breakdowns on this channel. We go deep, we go document it, and we make sure every layer of the story gets its proper treatment. The real story is actually way deeper than the headline because what Gucci did, how the evidence came out, and what the feds say happened inside that studio, that is the part nobody fully explained. So let us go back to where Pooh Shiesty started. Lantrell Donald Williams Jr. was born on November 8, 1999 in Memphis, Tennessee. Now, for those who might not know the culture, Memphis rap has always had its own DNA. Gritty, stripped back, street-rooted with a rawness that does not apologize for itself. This is the city that gave us 3-6 Mafia, Yo Gotti, Young Dolph. Artists who came up making music that felt less like performance and more like testimony from the trenches, where every bar carried the weight of survival, late nights on the block, and the hustle that defines the South's underground sound. Shiesty fit that mold perfectly from the jump. He started putting out music independently in 2019 with his debut single, Hell Night, generating real attention locally and across the South. He was building organically, single by single, without the machinery of a major label behind him, grinding through SoundCloud drops, local shows, and word-of-mouth buzz that spread like wildfire in the streets. But the voice was undeniable. The energy was undeniable. And it was not long before somebody with major pull noticed that somebody was Radric Davis, known to the world as Gucci Mane, one of the founding fathers of trap music. Gucci had already launched and developed careers including Young Thug and had earned a Grammy nomination for his appearance on Lizzo's track. He is one of the figures who literally built the sound that made Atlanta the capital of rap, surviving his own legal battles, prison time, and industry shifts to emerge stronger, wiser, and still hungry to mentor the next wave. In 2020, after years of rebuilding his own brand, following personal and legal setbacks of his own, Gucci was running 1017 Records, now rebranded as the new 1017, and was actively looking for the next generation of talent to anchor the imprint. In April 2020, Gucci Mane signed Pooh Shiesty to a joint venture deal with 1017 Records and Atlantic Records. According to reporting from Billboard, the deal was said to be worth around $10 million. Now let me break down for y'all what that actually means for a rapper who had been grinding independently out of Memphis. That was not just a business deal. That was a stamp of approval, a cosign from one of the most respected names in Southern rap, paired with the distribution power of one of the biggest labels in the world, opening doors to radio play, playlist placements, international tours, and the kind of resources that turn local buzz into global dominance. Shiesty himself spoke about why he chose Gucci's imprint, saying he did not know who else he would go to because nobody was coming at him like that. It just made perfect sense. They celebrated the signing by releasing a collaborative single together. They were out there presenting a mentor-protege dynamic to the world. And for a minute, it felt like the beginning of something historic, with Gucci passing the torch in ways that echoed his own come-up stories, mentoring Shiesty on industry navigation, studio sessions, and the business side that so many young artists overlook until it's too late. The momentum from that signing was immediate. Gucci started putting Shiesty on key 1017 projects, including So Icy Summer, a compilation that dropped in July 2020 and introduced Shiesty to a national audience. Collaborations like Still Remember and Who Is Him with Gucci began stacking up, each track layering Shiesty's aggressive delivery over Gucci's signature trap beats, creating anthems that resonated with fans craving that authentic street energy mixed with polished production. Then on November 6, 2020, Shiesty released Back in Blood featuring Lil Durk. That record became his highest charting solo moment up to that point, peaking at number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100. He also appeared on Spot'em Got'em's Beatbox 2 remix, which peaked at number 12 on the same chart. Within less than a year of signing, Pooh Shiesty was already placing records inside the top 15 of the biggest singles chart in the world. He was named a XXL Freshman. He was named Billboard's Hip Hop Rookie of the Month. The machine was working, and Shiesty was the engine, delivering bars that captured the raw Memphis sound while appealing to a broader audience, hungry for real talk amid the glitz of mainstream rap. Then came February 5, 2021, Shiesty Season. His debut mixtape dropped as a 17-track project featuring Lil Durk, Gucci Mane, Big 30, 21 Savage, and more. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with 62,000 album equivalent units in its opening week. That is not a soft debut. That is a statement. That is the kind of first project performance that most rappers dream about their entire careers and never reach. Gucci had bet on a winner, and Shiesty had delivered, proving the investment was paying off in streams, sales, and cultural impact that had the whole South riding with him. But here's where it gets real spicy. Because in October 2020, even before the mixtape dropped, Shiesty had been arrested in connection with the shooting in Bay Harbor Islands, Florida, at a property called the Landon Hotel. He was initially released from custody, and things kept moving forward in his career. Then in June 2021, he was arrested again, this time in connection with a Memorial Day weekend shooting at a strip club in Miami-Dade County. And later that same month, he was formally indicted on 4 counts related to the October 2020 shooting. The federal charges described a situation in which prosecutors alleged that Shiesty and co-conspirators arrived to purchase marijuana, codeine, and sneakers from 2 individuals. During that meetup, the Fed said a member of his group produced a weapon, and 2 victims were shot. Both survived. Now check it. Investigators later tied Shiesty to the scene through what has to be one of the most internet-era pieces of evidence imaginable, his own Instagram. Investigators discovered that a Louis Vuitton bag found in the parking lot of the Landon Hotel was the same one Shiesty had been posting on his social media. And then it got even more specific. Some of the $100 bills in that bag had the same serial numbers as bills visible in close-up shots Shiesty had posted online. His own flex post helped place him at the scene. That is some real poetic irony right there, where the same social media clout chasing that built his fame became the thread that unraveled parts of his freedom. Throughout 2021 and early 2022, the case evolved significantly. By the time Shiesty entered a guilty plea in January 2022, the charges had been narrowed down to a single count: conspiracy to possess firearms in furtherance of crimes of violence and drug trafficking. As part of the plea deal, prosecutors dropped 3 other charges, including one that had carried a potential life sentence. On April 20th, 2022, U.S. District Judge Kevin Michael Moore sentenced Lantrell Williams Jr. to 63 months in federal prison, 5 years and 3 months, along with 3 years of supervised release. He was also ordered to pay $35,000 in restitution. His attorney, Bradford Cohen, noted after the sentencing that Shiesty was happy the judge listened to their argument, and that both attorney and client were pleased with the outcome given the maximum exposure they had been facing. At the time of sentencing, Shiesty was 22 years old, and Shiesty's season had peaked at number 3 on the Billboard 200. He was in the middle of one of the most promising rookie runs in modern rap. And then it all stopped. The album Momentum, the feature placements, the potential sophomore project that would have cemented his standing. All of it paused because of decisions made outside the studio, forcing him to reflect, write from behind bars, and watch his peers continue to climb while he navigated the system. But here's where it gets interesting. During his absence, Gucci Mane made a significant public statement about the 10-17 roster. In a video posted around October 2024, Gucci announced that he was releasing nearly his entire artist roster, citing profit and loss decisions. But notably, he made a point of keeping 2 names, Fujiano and Pooh Shiesty. Even with Shiesty locked up and his release date roughly 18 months away at that point, Gucci publicly held that spot. He confirmed again to TMZ in 2025 that Shiesty remains signed. Now, for y'all who know how the industry works, that kind of loyalty from a label boss toward an incarcerated artist is genuinely rare. Most labels move on quick, restructuring rosters and chasing the next hot trend while the locked-up talent fades into memory. Gucci kept it open, signaling to the streets and the industry that he saw something special in Shiesty, a loyalty that went beyond numbers and spoke to the family vibe he often preached in interviews and tracks. And in retrospect, that makes what allegedly came next even more difficult to process. Shiesty was released early from federal prison on October 6, 2025, having served approximately 3 years of his sentence under the First Step Act, a 2018 bipartisan criminal justice reform law that allows federal inmates to earn credits toward early release through good behavior and program participation. His original projected release date had been April 11, 2026, meaning the early release shaved roughly 6 months off his time. His attorney, Bradford Cohen, released a statement saying he was elated that Shiesty had come home and that he believed it was just the beginning of his second act. And for a moment, it really looked like that. On December 12, 2025, Pooh Shiesty dropped FDO, his first post-prison single. The song debuted at number 22 on the Billboard Hot 100 and shot to number 1 on both Billboard's Hot R and B hip-hop songs and Hot Rap Songs charts. Real Talk, a comeback track reaching number 1 on the rap chart after 3 years away from the game, is not just a strong showing. It is a signal that the audience had waited, that they were ready, that despite everything, the commercial pull was still there. The comeback narrative was writing itself, and the industry was watching closely, with fans flooding social media, praising his unchanged intensity and speculating on future collabs that could dominate 2026. But here's where the story gets deeper than just a feel-good return. Because underneath that momentum, something else was reportedly building. According to a federal criminal affidavit filed by FBI agent Brittany Garcia, Shiesty was dissatisfied with the terms of his existing recording contract with 1017 Records. Public reporting from Complex and other outlets also indicated that around this time, Yo Gotti and his CMG label had expressed interest in signing Shiesty, which would have meant directly competing with Gucci Mane for the rapper's services. Now let me break down why that matters. The relationship between Gotti and Gucci has historically been complicated going back years. 2 powerful Southern label bosses with overlapping rosters and competing interests, each representing different facets of the South's rap empire. So the idea of Shiesty potentially jumping from 1017 to CMG was not just a business transaction. It was loaded with history, potential bad blood, and the kind of label politics that have ended careers or sparked long-standing feuds in the game. And it is in that context, contract frustration, competing label interest, and the weight of a deal signed 6 years earlier under very different circumstances that prosecutors say the events of January 10th, 2026 were set in motion. So, check it. According to federal court documents, Shiesty arranged a meeting with Gucci Mane and others to take place at a recording studio on Dallas Parkway. The stated purpose was to discuss the terms of his recording contract with 1017 Records. Gucci Mane, referred to in the federal complaint only as RD, traveled to Dallas along with 2 other individuals described as music industry professionals, These three men flew into the city on a Saturday afternoon believing they were walking into a business meeting about renegotiating terms, clearing paths for new music, or perhaps even expanding the partnership in fresh ways. What prosecutors allege happened instead is the kind of thing that reads more like a movie than a real event. The kind of betrayal plot that scriptwriters dream up, but hits harder because it allegedly played out in real life with real consequences. According to the affidavit, once the three victims entered the studio, Shiesty asked to speak with the label owner privately in a recording room. Gucci Monet entered that room with Shiesty along with Shiesty's father William Sr. and fellow Memphis rapper Rodney Wright Jr. known as Big 30. What was described as a private business conversation then allegedly took a violent turn. Prosecutors say Shiesty produced contract termination paperwork and told the label owner to sign it. When the label owner refused, Shiesty allegedly reached into a bag and pulled out a black AK-style pistol, pointing it directly at Gucci Mane and demanding he sign. According to the affidavit, he did sign. And once he had, Shiesty allegedly took his wedding ring, watch, earrings, and cash. The real kicker, though, is what was happening simultaneously on the other side of that studio door. While Gucci was in that recording room, the other defendants allegedly produced firearms and moved against the two remaining victims outside. One victim, identified in court documents only as MM, was choked from behind to the point of near unconsciousness, and had a Rolex watch, a Louis Vuitton bag, and other items stolen. Another victim was pushed onto a couch and robbed of his wallet and jewelry. Big 30, according to prosecutors, physically blocked the studio door with his body to prevent anyone from escaping. And according to the complaint, at some point during the confrontation, the victims believed they might be killed, creating an atmosphere of terror that went far beyond any typical industry dispute. This is where we got to address the evidence because this is where the prosecution's case gets very specific and layered. The electronic monitoring data from Shiesty's ankle bracelet, which he was still wearing as a condition of his supervised release from the 2022 conviction, showed him at the studio location on January 10th, directly contradicting any claim that he was not present. For y'all who might not know, when you are on home confinement after a federal sentence, that ankle monitor is pinging your location constantly. There is no window to say you were somewhere else, no room for alibis when the tech tells the story. Cell phone records and license plate reader data also corroborated that several defendants had traveled together from Memphis to Dallas in the days leading up to the incident and stayed at a Dallas hotel after it was over. Surveillance footage from the studio and surrounding businesses was cited in the complaint. Fingerprint evidence recovered from items inside the studio, including red plastic cups reportedly tied multiple defendants to the scene. And prosecutors also pointed to social media posts made by several defendants in the hours and days after the incident, where they were allegedly seen displaying large amounts of cash and jewelry believed to have been taken in the robbery, flashing items that matched descriptions from the victims in ways that raised serious red flags. But this is where the story gets even more calculated. The affidavit states that Shiesty's father, Lantrell Williams Sr., also a named defendant, visited a Staples store hours before the meeting where investigators believe the contract release documents used in the alleged extortion were printed. The implication being that the termination paperwork was prepared in advance, that the entire meeting was constructed from the beginning as a setup, not some heat-of-the-moment argument that spiraled. This was not a confrontation that escalated. According to prosecutors, it was planned with precision, turning what should have been a standard contract talk into something far more sinister. Now let's talk about Big 30 specifically because his role goes deeper than just being a co-defendant. Rodney Wright Jr. has been Shiesty's closest musical collaborator going back to their independent Memphis days. Their 2019 debut Hell Night was the record that started everything for both of them, bonding them through shared struggles and early successes that built a brotherhood in the booth. According to prosecutors, Big 30's alleged role in the Dallas studio was not passive. The affidavit says he physically handed Shiesty the bag containing the AK-style pistol, filmed Gucci Mane on his cell phone as he was allegedly forced to sign the contract release under duress, and barricaded the studio door with his body to prevent anyone from escaping. When he was arrested, law enforcement reportedly found firearms in his vehicle. The career implications for him are just as severe as for Shiesty. In April 2026, prosecutors filed a motion arguing Big 30 should remain detained, specifically because he was on the verge of signing a seven-figure recording deal, framing that contract not as a stabilizing factor but as a flight risk. A Tennessee judge initially granted him a $100,000 bond, but Texas District Court Judge Ed Kincaid immediately stayed that order. The deal that should have been the biggest moment of his career became a document prosecutors used against him in a detention brief. On April 2nd and 3rd, 2026, 8 of the 9 defendants were arrested across Dallas, Memphis, and Nashville. The 9th was still being sought at the time. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Texas, led by Ryan K. Patrick, held a press conference announcing the charges. He called Shiesty the ringleader of the conspiracy and described what allegedly happened plainly. The victims in this case came to Dallas to conduct legitimate business, and they were met with firearms and violence. On April 28th, a federal grand jury returned an 18-page formal indictment, unsealed shortly after charging all 9 defendants. The indictment included 5 counts. Count 1 charging conspiracy to commit kidnapping spanning early January through January 13th, 2026. Counts 2 through 4 charging substantive kidnapping and extortion, including aiding and abetting liability. And Count 5 charging 4 of the co-defendants with transporting stolen goods across state lines. The government also sought forfeiture of all proceeds and assets tied to the alleged offenses. All 9 defendants face up to life imprisonment if convicted on the kidnapping conspiracy count alone. On April 8th and 9th, 2026, a detention hearing was held before U.S. Magistrate Judge Renee Harris Tolliver in Dallas. This is where both sides laid out their arguments publicly for the first time, and it is worth breaking down what each side is actually working with. On the prosecution side, the ankle monitor data placing Shiesty at the scene, the Staples receipt tied to his father, the social media post showing stolen jewelry, the license plate reader data showing the group traveling from Memphis to Dallas together, fingerprint evidence from the studio, and the fact that Shiesty was actively violating the terms of his supervised release from his 2022 conviction at the time. Prosecutors also noted that Gucci Monet's wedding ring, watch, and earrings were taken, personal items, not just cash, which adds a layer of premeditated humiliation to the alleged robbery that is hard to explain away as a misunderstanding. On the defense side, the arguments are focused on the gaps. The FBI admitted during the hearing that they had not directly interviewed Gucci Mane or the other victims at the time of the arrest, relying instead on statements given to Dallas police at the scene. Shiesty's attorneys called it a he-said-she-said type of case and flagged the 3-month delay between the January incident and the April arrest as a significant procedural concern. The defense also pointed out that the contract document prosecutors described as the centerpiece of the extortion, the signed release from 1017 Records, had not been recovered or produced in court at the time of the detention hearing. No contract, no video of the alleged signing, and no direct FBI interviews with the primary victim. Those are real holes that the defense will lean on hard at trial. Williams was seen repeatedly shaking his head during testimony, but Judge Tolliver ordered him to remain in custody regardless, stating plainly, "I find that the weight of the evidence against you is strong." Shiesty was transferred to the Kaufman County Jail in mid-April. At the end of April, he filed a motion requesting new counsel, which was granted. In early May 2026, he entered a plea of not guilty to all counts. By mid-May, a trial date had been set, July 6, 2026, in federal court in Dallas with a final pre-trial conference scheduled for July 1st. As of the writing of this, the case has seen developments with the trial now pushed to February 2027 due to the complexity, giving both sides more time to build their arguments in what promises to be one of the most watched rap-related federal cases in years. Now let me break down what the realistic outcomes look like going into that trial. Federal kidnapping convictions carry some of the heaviest sentencing exposure in the entire federal code. Under 18 U.S.C. Section 1201, a conviction can result in life in prison. And if prosecutors argue victims were not released unharmed, a mandatory minimum of 20 years can apply. Beyond that, Shiesty is also facing potential supervised release violations from his 2022 Florida conviction, meaning any new sentence could run consecutively on top of whatever the court already imposed, not alongside it. For Big 30, the exposure is identical. If the defense succeeds in creating reasonable doubt, particularly around the missing contract document, the delayed arrests, and the lack of direct FBI interviews with the primary victim, an acquittal or hung jury is procedurally possible. But federal conviction rates in the United States consistently run above 85%, and cases built on electronic monitoring data, fingerprints, surveillance footage, and social media evidence are difficult to overcome at trial. The government's case has real gaps, but it also has multiple independent layers of documented evidence. That is the reality Shiesty's new legal team is walking into. This situation forces us to think bigger about the rap industry as a whole. Mentorship in hip-hop is supposed to be sacred, a way for veterans like Gucci to lift up the young guns coming from similar backgrounds, sharing war stories about label deals, street life, and staying relevant after setbacks. Gucci has been open about his own transformations, from the wild days to becoming a family man and savvy businessman, and seeing someone he invested in allegedly turn the tables in such a dramatic fashion raises questions about trust, loyalty, and how fame and money can twist even the strongest bonds. Fans on social media have been split, with some defending Shiesty as a product of his environment, who felt trapped in a deal that no longer served him, while others side with Gucci, pointing to the public support he showed by keeping Shiesty on the roster as proof of genuine care that was repaid with betrayal. The diss track Gucci dropped, Crash Dummy, became an instant talking point, with lyrics that fans dissected line by line for hidden meanings, turning the song into a cultural moment that amplified the legal drama far beyond courtrooms. It was not just music. It was Gucci processing the pain through the only language he knows best, turning personal hurt into bars that resonated with anyone who's ever been stabbed in the back by someone they lifted up. Expanding on the Memphis roots, the city has produced legends who embody that unfiltered grit, from the hypnotic flows of 3-6 Mafia to the entrepreneurial spirit of Yo Gotti's CMG empire. Shiesty carried that torch with pride, his balaclava-wearing persona and ad-libs becoming signatures that fans loved for their authenticity. His collaborations with Big 30 were more than music. They were extensions of real-life camaraderie forged in the same neighborhoods where trust is everything until it's not. The alleged involvement of family and close collaborators in the Dallas events adds another heartbreaking layer, showing how one bad decision can ripple through entire circles, affecting not just careers but lives and legacies built over years. On the business side, this case highlights the ugly underbelly of recording contracts, where young artists often sign deals early in their careers without full understanding of the long-term implications, leading to frustrations that boil over when success hits but freedom feels limited. Gucci's 1017 has always positioned itself as more than a label, a movement, a family. But incidents like this test that narrative and make other label heads think twice about investments in talent with complicated backgrounds. The human element here cannot be ignored either. Shiesty, fresh out and riding high on a #1 single, had the world at his feet. Opportunities for tours, endorsements, and a sophomore project that could have solidified him as a mainstay. Instead, the alleged choices led back to cuffs, court dates, and uncertainty that derails not only his momentum, but the dreams of everyone in his camp. Gucci, on the other end, has had to navigate public scrutiny while focusing on his own projects, family, and label stability, proving once again his resilience after decades in the game. This drama also sparks broader conversations in hip-hop about accountability, the glorification of street elements in music versus real-world fallout, and whether the industry does enough to support artists transitioning from prison back to civilian life without falling into old patterns. Supporters have rallied online with petitions and fundraisers, while critics argue that talent alone isn't enough when patterns of behavior persist. As the trial approaches in 2027, every development will be scrutinized, from witness testimonies to forensic details, potentially reshaping how we view these larger-than-life figures. In the end, the Gucci, Mane, and Pooh Shiesty saga reminds us that behind the hits, the chains, and the clout, These are real people navigating high-stakes worlds where loyalty is currency and betrayal costs everything. The relationship between Gucci Mane and Pooh Shiesty, one of the most promising mentor-protege dynamics in recent Southern rap, has ended in the most dramatic, documented, and publicly devastating way imaginable. A man who held a spot on a label roster for a young rapper during 3 years of federal incarceration ended up, according to prosecutors, with a gun pointed at him by that same rapper in a Dallas recording studio. And the song Gucci, released in the aftermath, speaks not in the language of a press release or a social media post, but in the language that rap artists have always used when words are the only instrument they have left: bars, a beat, and the truth of what happened when the room went quiet and nobody was smiling anymore. The real question now is what the future brings. When this thing goes to a jury, every piece of that evidence, the ankle monitor data, the surveillance footage, the social media posts, the Staples receipt, it's laid out in a federal courtroom, and the verdict that comes out of that room writes the final chapter of one of the most unbelievable stories in recent rap history. We will be breaking down every development as it happens. So if you are not subscribed, now is the time. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you think actually went down in that studio? And what does this say about the price of loyalty in this industry? The layers keep unfolding, showing how one moment can rewrite years of history, forcing everyone involved to confront the difference between the image and the reality, the persona and the person. Hip-hop has always been about telling truths from the margins, but cases like this expose the cost when those truths collide with the system. Fans will debate for years whether it was a setup gone wrong, a contract dispute that escalated, or something deeper rooted in unresolved tensions from the streets and the boardroom. Either way, the story serves as a cautionary tale for aspiring artists everywhere about the importance of clear communication, legal counsel, and surrounding yourself with people who truly have your best interests at heart rather than their own agendas. As we wait for the trial, the music continues. The conversations rage on and the culture keeps evolving, one dramatic chapter at a time.